Hi everyone, this is the pocket bell canon tutorial, favorite piece of just about everyone in the world. Even people who don't like classical music love the pocket bell canon, and I remember hearing it for the first time in high school, and I just thought it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard. I was jealous that a friend of mine introduced it to me, that I had not discovered it for myself. And you know, I wish I could just kind of hear it for the first time again. But I have heard it millions of times, maybe not millions, but I have played it probably, well, for sure I play it 52 times a year because I play a wedding just about every weekend. And of course, this is the industry standard for bridal processionals. Back earlier in my career, I think you had like one pocket bell for every bridal march. But now it's about one bridal march for every 5 pocket bell cannons. So in this tutorial, I'm going to go phrase by phrase, or we'll just say variation by variation, because that's essentially what this is. It's a variation on a chord progression. It's a variation on this ostinato pattern, these repeating 8 notes that you hear in the cello part, or the bass line. And each one of these variations, each one of these melodic statements has its own character, its own flavor, its own style, although all within this Baroque style of playing. So the first step is to download my version. I have the fingerings and bowings that I use every single week, and I also have the sections marked. And then you can scrub through the video. I'll have the phrase number up here at the top. So if you're really interested in just, you know, working on a section, you can. So we'll start with the first phrase, the opening. It's just a simply beautiful descending scale. I mean, that's what we have. We start on the 3rd of the tonic chord. So this is in D major. And we start on the 3rd. There's the tonic. Okay, so we have this descending scale. Now, on my violin, I put a little dot because we're going to use the overhead camera so that you can see fingerings better. So I just put a dot just for your reference at the 3rd position mark. So in 1st position, it's where my 3rd finger is. In 3rd position, it'll be where my 1st finger is. And then, you know, it works right straight across all the strings. And fortunately, in this piece, you're only playing in 1st or 3rd position. We don't have any 2nd or 4th positions, no surprises. So, all right, so starting with the top. I do start in 3rd position because I want to get a very beautiful A string sound. Also, since most of these notes are on the A string, then you want that consistency in tone quality. So if you started in 1st position, you would have one note that's clearly very bright, and then you have to cross over because open E would just not be allowed. So then you're going bright A string. So 3rd position, that's where to start. And you can see my bow is pretty tilted, and I still want to have a medium sounding point. I don't want to be here. So make sure your bow doesn't trail over the fingerboard. Okay, let's talk about that shift. For me, this is the hardest shift in the piece because my goal is to do a fast shift in the context of slow-moving notes. And that's tricky. The timing of that is tricky because when you have a lot of space between one note to the next, there's all kinds of places to start your shift. So my goal is to start that shift right before the next note. And here's how I structure that, and here's how I suggest that you structure your practice, is to subdivide, use subdivisions as your guide to construct your timing grid. So I'll let you hear what it would sound like if I shifted after an 8th note subdivision. Okay, so that's the speed of my shift. Okay, it's a little too slow. I could hear the drag of the first finger, so that didn't sound very good. It was disruptive to the melodic line. So here's a little faster. Still not, to me, it's not quite right yet. Better. So I'm thinking da 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 da. Now I'm going to do one last subdivision, 30-second notes, 8 bows per note. And I'm going to shift right after that last bow stroke before that first position shift. I'm going to try to do that, and I'm just going to think those subdivisions in my head. Okay, so that's what I'm going to try to do in this case. There are other pieces where I would want a slower shift, you know, for expressive purposes, but for the expressive purpose of this line, I want to hear these notes as if they were just bells. Dum, bum, bum, bum. Okay, so the other thing with this is, with this opening phrase, is to just establish the feel of the right arm, the style of what your bow arm is going to be doing, which is mostly legato détaché strokes. Okay, so legato détaché, we want just this free moving, free opening and closing of the arm, consistent bow speed. We don't want strokes that get slow in the middle. Especially, we don't want strokes that depend on the left hand for cues. You know, so if we shift, we stop our bow. We change notes, we slow our bow speed. No, we want just this independence. So my opening is just a follow through. I just open until my arm is kind of all the way, comfortably all the way open. I'm going to come back closer to the frog, so don't think, well, I'll close my arm until it's comfortable, because you may stop there. So this does always require a little more effort. Going to the frog requires more effort. So just keep this bow arm moving. You want this same bow speed through the turnarounds and everything. And that will help set up, you know, the bow stroke for many of these other phrases. In fact, in the next one, phrase 2, it's the same bow stroke. It's still, you're changing on the quarter note value. You're still going to use the same amount of bow. And if you keep that speed consistent, your bow distribution will be perfect, okay? Because it's 2 notes per bow. Your fingers will change in the right place. Your bow stroke is going to be opening and closing in this very even tempo, so you don't even have to worry about bow distribution. All right, so here's the second phrase, and we're going to keep the bow moving with that quarter note value, just like we were in the previous phrase. Left hand has 8th notes though. And now I do have some open strings, so I'll play it through first. All right, so we had a couple of shifts in there. Some open strings. It's okay, we're on the D string, so that the sound isn't as bright when you use the open string. Also, the notes are a little faster, they're 8th notes, so if you're not really sustaining an open string sound, so it's not as disruptive. Now I do try to keep my left hand very alive, which means I try to keep the vibrato going. Okay, so this is a place where you have to think about continuous vibrato. It's hard to keep that fourth finger moving. Now I shift here. Now when I have a shift after an open string, I fill in the time space from one note to the next note with movement. I completely fill it in. I don't wait. Here's the danger. Okay, if you wait to make your shift after an open string, I guarantee you it's probably going to be off. It's difficult to find a note when you're not sliding on the string because you can't hear the approach. So you really want to do a good job of feeling, of really being very tactile in your perception of the shift. So this is in that second measure of the second phrase. And I just glide the inside of my hand right along the neck. Now I'm lifting my fingers up high just to demonstrate, but I'll play it exactly how I would be playing it. Okay, now back down. Now I'm not quite as concerned about this shift. I will, just find a nice, comfortable shifting speed. Now right here, I start to make a crescendo. And what I can feel in my right arm, on that string crossing, okay, it happens on an up bow. As I lower my arm from the D string to the A string, I feel my first finger pressing into the A string. So it intensifies the tone on that C sharp. And the other thing, it's the leading tone. So it's a good note to intensify. Here's another shift after an open string. Same thing, I just feel that distance. It's not quick. You can also make a quick shift after an open string, you just have to do it right away. That's okay too, but I like the feeling of just sort of consuming the entire time interval with movement. Now, you have to stop the trill soon enough to make the shift. So, da-da-da-da-da-da-bum. Okay, now my tempo might be a little off. I'm probably playing a little too slow for a demonstration, but okay, so that's the correct tempo. All right, so now phrase 3. So phrase 3, we now have the 16th subdivision of our beat. So we went from quarter, dum, okay, so everything was this, and now we have dun, 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 dun. So you want to make that change abruptly, and you don't want to have any rhythmic ambiguity. So da yum da yum bum 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 bum. Right in the middle, this is a legato détaché right smack in the middle of the bow, which for most people is going to be right here around the square of the arm. So it's a little this way, a little that way, a little this way. If you have longer arms, you'll probably be a little bit more at the tip. That, for me, that's too much. You know, all my effort is going into sort of extending my arm, and it also makes the string crossings they're bigger. You know, you have more movement to get the bow from one string to the next. But when you're in the middle, the string crossings become smaller. And what I mean is just going from one string to the next takes less movement, requires less movement, and it requires less effort. So I like to be right in the middle. Okay, C sharp, that first C sharp, okay, this high third finger on the G string, too often it is not high enough with students. But you have a whole open string to pivot that elbow and to get that nice expansive hand shape. Okay, so you can see it's just like this claw that comes and hovers over the G string. So my goal when playing this is just to keep using the same amount of bow and to keep the weight into the string, regardless of the string I'm on. So do some 16th notes on open strings, crossing strings, make frequent string crossings so you can really transfer weight. You don't lose tone, especially when going to lower strings. So really kind of lead down to that lower string. And I also just make these hairpins or these little swells in sound. I just sort of follow the contour of the melody. More, less. Okay, now we're to phrase 4. So now phrase 4. This is one of the big climactic moments in this piece because we have these slow notes that just build and build up to the highest note, D. We don't go above a D in this piece. It's the tonic. It's on a strong, it's on a downbeat. So it really does require that we sustain sound. So not just sustain sound, but build sound. But let's get up there, because that's all in third position. So we have a shift on that second eighth note. So we're preparing from the second finger, shifting up to its place in third position, which is the note A. So this is how we work on the shift. We add a note. Yeah, you will recognize this shift. I hope you do. Okay, it's the exact same shift as the humoresque shift. So second finger to A, but the bow crosses over, so you never really hear an A. Now, whole bow strokes, close to the bridge. But you're not going to really pour on the power until we get to the C sharp. So on that note, I really am leaning in with the first finger, and I really am going even closer to the bridge, just by a hair. Just kind of hug a little tighter. Now this D string, this D, note D here, so I'm at the end of the first measure of this phrase. Retake, now light bow stroke. Now start to really glue everything together. And now we have that note. So now it's an eighth note, and we want to release a little pressure when we get there. So we're building up. Release by pulling the bow speed faster. Pulling the bow faster. So slow bow speed, faster bow speed. That shift right there. Same thing, light down bow. Now I stay in first position for this. You could shift, but I just stay. Now I use the open E there, partly because at this point, if you're playing in a quartet, there's a lot of sound going on. It just doesn't stick out so much. It's a shorter note. Everything is very bright. We are moving into probably the brightest part of this piece where we have the fast notes. So I go ahead and let the E string peek out there. Now I do make sure that I don't have a strong bow stroke on it though. I don't need to push hard. Okay, then it does stick out. Light. Okay, now let's go to phrase 5. That's the money phrase. That's the one that everyone really just gets overtaken with Pachelbel canon when it gets to that point. In fact, this is the place where the bride wants to hear when she's walking down the aisle. So sometimes we start playing, and if we get to that part, we'll skip on further ahead, and then we'll come back to this part. So we schedule it. So boom, right when she's walking down the aisle, this is the phrase that everyone hears. But you're going to have to watch the next segment on Violin Lab. It's free to watch. It's free, but I want you to watch it there because I want you to explore other things on the side and to fall in love with it and join us and become a member. So when you go look for it, I have a link here in the description. But if somehow you don't find it, just go to the video library page, and there is a search box, and spell Pachelbel correctly, and you'll find the videos.